Of course, when you find a majority of people in politics who are driven that way, eventually there will be conflict because such people are not going to stand for right, like in the case we have seen, where there is a dictatorship that has been growing. You find that there is a leader who has lost direction, and the people who are in that establishment are not able to stand firm against the wrongs that he does. And therefore, it has a negative in that sense, that people who want to have quick fixes, people who want to take shortcuts, simply to benefit themselves as individuals. At the end of the day, it's a cost to the rest of society. But we have to keep training and talking and discussing these issues so that people get more and more strengthened in terms of character. Really, it's a weakness in character. Because as the Bible says, do unto others as you want done unto you. It's a golden rule in the corporate world. It's also recognized. Because if I want something good, it's what I should do to someone else.
Very true.
But you find inconsistency in terms of how people practice politics. Because someone says, as long as I get to parliament, as long as I get to LC5, and I can take care of myself and the interests of myself and the family, then the rest of society is suffering. The more the injustices remain, the more we are moving towards an explosion. But this person would have participated more or less in that downward slide, but people maybe don't pay attention to it. If they pay attention to it, they may not care. But ultimately, those kinds of actions really aggravate the situation.
Do you think those values are achievable? Because
they are.
Politics and credibility are not known for moving together.
No. Look at some of the countries that on the globe. Look at, for example, the Scandinavian countries. I think the Scandinavian countries have got the best political environment where people are able to live in harmony, at peace, in an environment where they have equal opportunities, where they can access whatever they want to access within the law without hassles. They are not different from us. They are not any more intelligent than we are. We have got the same capabilities that all those who have developed have. But the problem is that a number of us who are in politics want to take shortcuts. And there are no shortcuts in life.
General Muntu, many people believe in you and believe in your systems. They follow you, your followers. Give us a sneak peek into your systems in ensuring credibility as a politician, truthfulness in whatever you say, and vis-a-vis delivering.
There are very, very few people on this planet who do something wrong and don't recognize it. The majority of the people, the moment they do something that is wrong, they recognize it. The institutions that train us, schools, churches, mosques, families, all of us train us to do what is right. Something went wrong, in the process of, in the last 58 years, where the majority of the people, even traditionally, we had strong, stable communities where tradition had trained people. There were mechanisms for training people to be honest, to speak the truth, But now that became destabilized, and we are thrown into the chaos that we are in, where everybody thinks, majority of the people think that, if I don't take care of myself, nobody's going to take care of me. If I tell you a lie, it is okay, as long as I get benefit from that. But at the end of the day, it creates chaos amidst us. We are 45 million people. We are increasing very, very fast as a population. We are going to get 100 million people. If you have 100 million people that live in a society where it's like the jungle law applies, that the more who is powerful, like a lion in the jungle, it will eat an antelope, it will eat a zebra, it will eat whatever, and these zebras, the antelopes have nothing to protect them.
Perhaps that's the Okwebe slogan.
If we don't change this political environment, where that even ordinarily the most vulnerable are protected by the law, we are moving towards a larger crisis. And therefore there must be those, one, who know that doing right, being just, being fair is very, very important, even for our own protection as individuals, as a society. Because once those practices are inbuilt within society, it's what creates stability.
Absolutely, very true.
But right now, we have a problem. Those who are in leadership, quite a number of them don't care about justice, fairness, and all that. Then the population has lost hope. They have become so skeptical. They almost have reached a point where they think that there's no way you can have justice, or there's no way you can have fairness, or there's no way you can have transparency. And that's a big impediment, right? But we can't give up. Those of us who know that fairness, transparency, equality before the law, justice are critical components in having a civilized society, we must keep fighting until we achieve it. Because we are not different from the countries where they have achieved it.
Absolutely. Now, General Muntu, let's look at ANT, the Alliance for National Transformation. And this is a party, a political party that was launched last year, 2019, in March?
Yes. No, in 22nd May.
22nd May.
Yeah.
Okay. So after the launching, you've been traversing the entire nation.
Yeah.
Coordinating, building systems underground at all levels. Let's look at your preparedness for 2021. Just in case you get office, what is top on your agenda?
First step is to get honest, disciplined men and women of integrity. That's the key factor. Put them in positions of responsibility. Because you see, to implement the manifesto that you have, it is not the beauty of the manifesto. It is the capability to implement it. Because for the last 58 years, we have had different countries, different parties in power, different groups in power with beautiful sounding manifestos. But there's been failure in terms of implementation. So first and foremost, you get good men and women of integrity. You put them in positions of responsibility. One, tackling corruption. There's no way you can eliminate corruption unless you have got people of integrity.
That's the biggest problem this country is having power. And General Museveni is trying to fight, but it seems...
Well, you can't
suffocating
fight it because he feeds on it. It feeds into the whole political processes. It's built around corruption and even the rented support that this regime has. All of it is based on corruption. So there's no way they can eliminate the very pillars that prop them up. So whatever you hear from the regime about, the stories about fighting corruption, they're just simply a deception. Anybody who wants to fight corruption, you'll see them in the character of the people whom they appoint in a party. The moment you eliminate corruption, one, you rechannel the resources which are hemorrhaging through corruption. I think the statistics have it around 500 million United States dollars that we lose in a year. So if you channel those resources into the critical areas like health, like education, like agriculture, like infrastructure, power, water provision, then you know that you are stimulating the economy. But one of the things that we will focus a lot on, one, agriculture, because 70% of our population is in agriculture. So you must ensure that, one, you have got well-trained men and women in the agricultural extension services. You must ensure that you train more and more training in modern agricultural practices, good farm management, improved seeds, the use of fertilizer in areas where you find that soils have got exhausted. The government must invest in the infrastructure for irrigation. You cannot expect the majority of individuals to be able to do that. And then you must also invest in agro-processing or put in place an environment where those who want to engage in agro-processing can engage in agro-processing. You must engage in putting in place the necessary environment and also putting in place marketing mechanisms, because that's another problem that you face. Two, there is no way you can expect those who are in farming to succeed if they remain in the current environment where they borrow money on commercial rates.
Yes.
And therefore it is absolutely necessary to have an agricultural bank where they would be able to lend money on low interest rates and long-term repayment periods. Any group that wants to succeed, you must invest heavily in agriculture. Then, and also, of course, cooperatives, because there are many small-scale farmers. And if you are able to put in place an environment where cooperatives can be put in place so they can prosper. They help in aggregating the power of the small producers around whatever crop or around whatever activities that they are engaged in. And investing heavily in education, quality education.
General Muntu, before you move on to education,
Yes.
I wanted us to discuss the agricultural sector, just like you did mention. I understand where you come from, and I don't intend to downplay your ideas in the agricultural sector. Having been in India and viewed the agricultural system, and being an economics student, which I did in India also, from my research, there is no country globally that has excelled and survived economically on agriculture, on agriculture alone. That means you just have to organize it for a short time and have a strategic movement plan to another sector to sustain the economy. How long will would the agricultural dependence take? Because as far as I've known, my lifetime, Uganda has been an economy dependent and fed on agriculture.
Yes, but subsistence, mostly. And that's why any government that wants to, move the 70%, because eventually you're going to have rural-urban migration. Eventually, as the country grows, you're going to have more movement from the agricultural sector to the manufacturing sector. Therefore, you'll also be having to create jobs in the manufacturing sector, in the services sector. But also recognize that population is growing. We have got 45 million people. We're going to grow to about 100 million people. If you are not able to produce food, you are highly vulnerable. Any country that is not able to have food security is a vulnerable society.
And COVID-19 has taught us that.
It is a vulnerable society. So you invest in agriculture and you ensure that people are able to prosper, even in agriculture, even as that rural-urban migration happens. Because eventually what happens, depending on the method any government takes, because there are those who choose to empower even those who have got small land holdings. If you are able to train them in good modern agricultural practices, if they are able to access credit, low interest rate, long-term repayment periods, if they have got access to good extension services, and also the crops that they can grow on small scale or mixed agriculture, they'll be able to live off that, and they'll be able to get good returns on their investments. And then there are those who will find that as long as they're not able to make it in those small scale holdings, they'll be selling. And there are those who will consolidate land and therefore become large-scale agricultural farmers. Whichever happens, there must be a lot of focus by the regime in that. So you cannot escape the fact that there must be investment in the agricultural sector.
Absolutely. But
in the short term, even in the mid-term, even in the long term.
Sustainability.
Yes, sustainability.
All the way
so that even those who move out of agriculture, that there must be creation of opportunities in other areas. For example, in manufacturing. But manufacturing at this point in time, the area where you find that we have got comparative advantage is in the agro-processing sector.
Very true.
Yes.
General Muntu, sitting here,
investing in agriculture also leads to industrialization in a sense.
Give us, maybe this question would be coming to in an economics context or to an economics of the nation, an economist. I don't know if we can get a timeline of this transition, because I represent an entire generation sitting here, the young generation, a generation that is quite impatient. Give us a timeline.
Well, I really can't give a timeline, but I know that if there is a disciplined group that is focused on how to invest, first stem the hemorrhage in terms of what we lose through corruption and all that, and then invest in critical sectors. If we go by what has happened elsewhere, we have seen, for example, Singapore, we've seen Malaysia, we've seen South Korea. In a span of 30 years, they have moved from being an underdeveloped country to going into like Singapore in the first world. And whatever anybody else has done elsewhere on this planet, we can do. Because I don't think they've got any capabilities that are different from our own capabilities that are God created. We have seen China move from, in the span of 50 to 70 years, moving from being an underdeveloped country to being the second largest economy in the world. And you can imagine they've got 1.3 billion people. So that's a huge leap. And I don't think that that is difficult for us to achieve. The question is getting a critical number of disciplined people who think alike, who act in concert, and I believe between 20 years to 40 years, a country like this will be moved from where it is and it'll be in the first world.
Absolutely.
You know?
All right. Thank you very much, General Muntu. But let's go back to the Alliance for National Transformation.
Yes.
And how you've prepared for 2021, because this is a time that each party is fastening their laces for the race, 2021. How prepared? What's your campaign strategy?
The lockdown has tremendously affected us, but we are not people who are deterred by circumstances. We keep focused on where we are heading, and therefore operate within the environment as it is. And therefore, since one of the biggest impediments is going to be lack of the holding of rallies, we have got to adjust and use town hall meetings, because those are allowed, and also use the media, electronic, print, social media. We are working on the strategy for being able to do that, so that we can have the utmost reach in terms of 17 million voters. Because if you are able to reach out of 17 million voters, you are able to reach 100% or 90%, you have an impact, or 80% at the least. If you are not able to access that many, your possibilities for victory would be hampered. And therefore, we are going to do everything humanly possible to access the 17 million voters through the available channels, as restricted as they seem to be, once you knock off the rallies. Well, the unfortunate thing, though, is we see rallies happening now in the rest of the country. One that the participants are just in the competition, or like those who are in the regime are the ones who are engaged in rallies. The opposition is limited. I don't know after nominations whether the Electoral Commission is going to be strong enough and professional enough to be able either to stop everybody from going into rallies.
Technical glitch, we were discussing the campaign strategy and internal structures of ANT, the Alliance for National Transformation. We have the president right in studio with us here. It's a huge honor to have retired Major General Gregory Mugisha Muntu Oyera in the STV studios. Let's proceed, Major General. Your structure and your campaign strategy, what is it tied on exactly that will give you an edge?
We are now mobilizing around candidates, because our effort for building the structures at the different levels, villages, parishes, sub-counties, was destabilized by the lockdown. So we had to shift focus. Now our main focus is on attracting good candidates at the different levels. Councillors LC3, Councillors LC5, mayors, LC3 chairpersons, LC5 chairpersons, members of parliament for constituencies, and the members of parliament. Because we know that the moment we get those councillors, for example, LC3 and chairperson LC3, councillors LC5 and chairperson LC3, because for them, they are more in the population than, for example, us at the national level. They are there 24/7. And therefore, we feed the party messages into them. We are mobilizing resources to ensure that we put it into their campaign. And therefore, they'll be able to build momentum at the lower level. And it's that momentum that will be able to slot in leaders at the different levels until the presidency. Our view is that you cannot bring momentum from up, however strong the leader would be. Because the nature of our situation here, besides the campaign itself, we've also got to ensure that there is vote protection. And also once the vote protection process is in place, that we're able to have systems for evacuating the DRA forms. The moment the counting is done, announcements are done, you have to have 100% capacity to get those DRA forms to the Tare Center. That's one of the
so whereas
best check
yes.
to stop those who would want to cheat you from cheating you. If you don't build those capabilities, then you'll be very, very highly vulnerable. So we keep on communicating to people who believe in the values of ANT all over the country to come up and join the ranks of those who are already in ANT in terms of being candidates for Councillor 0C3, Councillor 0C5, Chairperson 0C3, Mayors, Chairperson 0C5, and Members of Parliament. And then we'll be able to mobilize in the next 4 months. And it is within our reach to be able to overwhelm this regime come January, February next year.
Amazing approach, General Muntu. So whereas other people's strategy is from up trickling down in terms of structure, yours is from down coming up.
Yes.
From the
because
grassroots.
the population lives down there.
Yes.
That's where the base is. And therefore, if you want to have impact,
yes,
it is there that you must be heavily involved.
So from the grassroots. Let's look into your split from the FDC. What inspired your movement from the FDC to form the Alliance for National Transformation? What we know was just after you contested for presidency with Oboy and you lost those elections.
2017.
And then you moved on.
Yeah.
What inspired that? Because when you're moving on, you moved on with quite a huge chunk of the FDC that left the FDC weaker than it is today.
No, there was a problem because we had two strategies. There are colleagues who believe that it is not possible to remove this regime through an electoral process. And therefore that the most effective method would be to organize around civil disobedience or defiance as it is locally known. So that we would remove the regime through defiance and create an environment in which the party could build itself. There are those of us who believe that yes, while that is a legitimate, civil disobedience is a legitimate tool of fighting against the regime, we also believe that the rural population in Uganda is the largest, 70%, and you cannot mobilize them around defiance. And therefore, we thought that the only option in our circumstances that are left to us is to go and organize them down, and also organize the 30% within the the townships, the municipal centers and the cities, so that in the event that those who believe in a defiance would be able to take power before we reached an electoral cycle, that yes, would go into power.
But you realize the damage caused to the FDC.
If they would not be able to take power, and then we go into an electoral cycle like we have done, then we would need to be well prepared to take power through elections. Now we're not able to manage those two. So it's generated a lot of strife within the party. Under my leadership for 5 years, we had strife throughout.
For 5 years, do you realize
yes.
the damage that you had and the impact that you caused to the FDC, the party that you served for 5 years to build strong structures, moving away with almost half the structures, including Dan Mugara, who is now your head of elections?
It's not damage. It's for the good. Because if we had remained, we'd still be fighting. There's nothing that disempowers people, that demotivates people when they are operating in a state of strife. So our separation created peace on our side, because we don't have internal contradictions in regard to strategy. And also I believe it created peace in FDC itself, because they can organize and mobilize around defiance without anybody impeding them. So I wouldn't see any reason why anybody would think that our separation caused a problem. People think that for you to work together, that you must be in one vehicle. The only other problem may be that there could be, but that one is you don't see it only in our separation with FDC, because there are other parties which have not separated, but see they are not working together. So cooperation need not be built within a vehicle or a political party. You can cooperate even when you are separate entities. again, there is still a challenge in that regard. But in NT, we recognize that. And that's why we operate in such a way that we don't have any strife with any organization. We have no problems with the People Power, we have no problems with DP, we have no problems with JEMA, even with FDC that we separated from, and we don't have any formal relations. We don't have strife vis-a-vis them. We don't attack them, we don't undermine them, we don't badmouth them. Why? Because we are deliberate.
Does that mean you still your allies? Do you talk? Does that mean your allies? Do you talk?
All the other groups, we've told them that we are ready to work with them. FDC, we've only informed them that the day we recognize that they do trust us, we will work with them. We don't see them as our enemies. We do not provoke them. We don't undermine them. We take a position where we keep on waiting to understand at whatever point that will happen, that they do trust us. And we have told them that. And I don't see any problem at all us working with any other organization once they are willing for us to work together.
Do you talk with your former political ally, Dr. Kizza Besigye?
Well, it's taken a bit of time now, but they are concentrating still on their own strategy while we are concentrating on our own strategy. As long as we are not hostile to them, to me that is the most critical thing.
Recently, he came up and mentioned his plan B,
yes,
withdrawing from the presidential race, and saying he won't be running this time for presidency, having contested for over 6 times. This time he stood aside and said he would come up with plan B.
Yep.
What do you think of plan B? What do you think plan B is?
I've not studied the details of what plan B is. And right now, our main concentration is, if you want to call it plan A, if plan A is participating in an election, that's where we are focused. We are not about to participate in any other plan other than plan A at this point in time. As we build ourselves, as we prepare ourselves to overwhelm the regime through an electoral process. Even if that was not to be, the capabilities that we are building can enable us to do a number of things in an impactful way. That's why we don't want to lose focus and go in any other direction.
Very true.
We are people who believe that focus is very, very important. Don't fight on different fronts if you can afford to fight on only one front.
Let's go into issues of governance, but also a little bit of economics. When you look at the diplomatic settings of Uganda as of today and the situations that we've witnessed with different allies, regionally and globally, do you think our diplomatic position stands strong? Because when you're judging the state of the nation, you look at diplomacy and the relations, foreign relations. What do you make of our diplomacy?
I think there is a challenge within our region. Most of the regimes are looking at regime survival. Most of the regimes are looking at how to advance their own small countries. And even what they subscribe to, for example, regional integration, they pay it lip service. East African integration process had made some fair advances because they signed the customs union protocol. They implemented it, and once they implemented it, within 2-3 years, they had recognized that it was beneficial to all. And then they signed the common market. But they did not put their hearts in it because they impeded a number of things. For example, like free movement of labor. That hasn't happened yet. And you cannot have free movement of capital and you don't open up for free movement of labor. And then you think that you are going to have the benefits of what a common market is meant to do.
And the African Continental Free Trade Area also in the pipeline.
Yeah, but if you can't work together smoothly at a regional as a regional bloc, how on earth are you going to operate smoothly in 54 countries? I thought you just need to first ensure that within the countries themselves you observe the laws that you establish, and then within the regional blocs. And once you have effective cooperation, then the regional blocs can work together at a continental level.